In school, I used to think history was like a multiplication tables, a collection of clear dates, distinct eras, and solid facts. I was wrong. The deeper I delved into the subject, the more I realized that what we're taught as the absolute truth is often a mix of bureaucracy, politics, and simple human error. I'm going to tell you how the history we learned was pieced together from a pile of artifacts, academic mistakes, and failed experiments. And we'll see why our past isn't a marble monument, but a fragile case file marked investigation ongoing. Let's try to unravel this Gordian knot together. The Stone Age was a long period in early history. It lasted about 3.4 million years and ended between 4000 and 2000 BC. Technology developed differently in each region, but the Bronze Age mostly began around 3000 BC. It didn't end all at once, but faded as people learned to work with iron. Generally, it ended between 1200 and 1000 BC. The Iron Age started around 1200 BC. This age brought tougher weapons, better farms, and the birth of great civilizations. It was the final chapter of prehistory. This is pretty much how they've been teaching us history for over 100 years. But what if I told you that our neat and tidy timeline of human history, Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, wasn't crafted by a visionary genius? It was invented by a Danish archaeologist named Thomsen in 1819, who was handed a chaotic heap of artifacts in a dusty church attic and basically told, "Figure this out." He didn't have a grand theory. He had a bureaucratic problem. He looked at the pile and said, "Okay, this is stone, this is bronze, this is iron. I'll make 3 piles. That's it." What started as a simple, practical way to catalog junk on a storage shelf became the gospel of chronology for all of Europe. He essentially put a square peg in a square hole, but everyone else had to use that same peg for all the future round holes. I have profound respect for the legacy and scientific contribution of Christian Jurgensen Thomsen. Yet, I must stress that history and archaeology are more than just strict guidelines. The reality is found in the shades of gray, where there are no clear black and white. The Viking Age, specifically, is where the whole thing falls apart. Trying to pin down exact dates for the Vikings is like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. It's impossible. The British say it runs neatly from 793 to 1066. The Irish say, nope, we stopped at 1016. The Swedes and Norwegians have completely different start and end points because guess what? Not everyone got the memo at the same time. The real smoking gun here is that this whole periodization was built later to serve a political purpose. In the 19th century, when Denmark, Sweden, and Norway were all licking their wounds from various wars, they needed a golden age for national pride. So they took these brutal raiders and turned them into noble savages, a necessary rough and tumble phase on the road to their glorious Christian nationhood. This is where history gets dirty. Denmark got hammered by Prussia in 1864 and lost a ton of territory. What's the response? They need a superhero. So they start yelling that all the coolest Vikings, like Rolf the Walker, were Danish, not Norwegian. Pure historical spin. Norway, trying to ditch Sweden and gain independence, which they did in 1905, started shouting, "We colonized Iceland and Greenland. We're the toughest, most authentic Vikings." They were claiming bragging rights for their identity. Sweden, after losing Finland to Russia, just needed a historical pat on the back to feel good about themselves again. So, they weren't exactly searching for truth. They were constructing a sports team in the past so their grandfathers would look tougher than they actually were. That's why those boundaries are so artificial. It's ideology, not archaeology. History is often what people decide it should be, and sometimes those neat timelines we teach are just glorified filing labels that historians later used to force a narrative. It's not always about hidden agendas or politics. Sometimes it's just human error. Case in point, the Gokstad find. In 1880, the Gokstad ship was unearthed. Inside was a skeleton. The initial medical study was blunt. This was an old man, 60 to 70 years old, crippled by rheumatism, bedridden, and could barely feed himself. Fast forward to 2007. Professor Per Holk decides to double-check the diagnosis, and things got awkward. The grandpa was actually only about 40. He was 5 feet 11, a giant for his time. His thigh bones were 30% thicker than average. He had a pituitary tumor that pumped his body full of growth hormones. We're talking about a real-life incredible Hulk of the Viking Age. The most fascinating yet gruesome detail of his story is how he finally died. If you thought this grandpa faded away peacefully in bed, think again. His final moments weren't a tragedy. They were an action movie scene straight out of John Wick.
My path is set, the road is clear. The gates of Valhalla are drawing near. To halls of gold where the feast ne'er ends. I'll take my place among my friends. The mortal dust is shaken free. To the high one's hall I hold the key. Odin, I'm calling. Odin, I come. The road is open, the deed is done. From the field of blood to the hall of gold, my path is set, my story.
He was ambushed by a group of killers. A struggle ensued. We don't have the full picture of the battle. The outcome for our hero is all too clear. The killers played it smart. First, a sword blow below the left knee to drop the giant. Then, to make sure he stayed down, they smashed the same knee with a heavy club or hammer. They sliced off part of his right ankle and delivered the final blow, a deep stab to his right thigh that passed perilously close to the main artery. The original text says, 4 wounds from 3 different weapons were enough to kill him. We don't know how many of his attackers the giant took with him to Valhalla, but judging by his build, I'd bet it was quite a few.
My story told. When Ragnarok wakes, let me rise from the board to fall last time by the side of my Lord. My story told.
Not bad for a guy who was supposedly too sick to feed himself, right? While the Gokstad case was a character assassination, the Oseberg ship, a world-class masterpiece, was almost physically destroyed by the very people trying to save it. Found in 1904, it was a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. Professor Gustafson wanted to preserve the wood forever using the tech of the future, alum. It was a plan as reliable as a Swiss watch. They would boil the wood in a hot solution of aluminum salts. The salt would crystallize inside the fibers, acting like a structural skeleton, and it worked perfectly for 100 years, until chemistry decided to strike back. You see, the problem with Swiss watch plans is that sometimes the gears turn into sulfuric acid. Over time, the alum turned into sulfuric acid. Right now, the Oseberg ship is literally eating itself from the inside out. The wood has the consistency of a thin waffle. Scientists are panicking. If the museum's temperature or humidity shifts too fast, the crystallization will reverse and the wood will literally burst. The most beautiful Viking ship ever found might explode because someone nearby sneezed too loud. History isn't carved in stone. It's barely even written in pencil. Our grasp of the past is fragile, and we've only looked at a handful of cases from a vast archive of inaccuracies, mistakes, and fabrications. What we call absolute truth today is often just a temporary label, a best guess waiting for better technology, or a bolder question. So, don't look at history as a finished statue. Look at it as a crime scene where the investigation is still ongoing, and the evidence, well, the evidence might just explode if you sneeze too loud. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to stay updated.